first of all, of course, you did the first documentary about teachers.
Yeah.
And then what spurred you to go on to this one?
Well, I never play the lottery because I don't like the odds, and I just never win. But when I made this movie, I realized that there are a lot of kids in America that have to play the lottery to have a good education. And that just drove me crazy. I read this article about it, and I was like, wait a minute, how is this possible that in America people have to do this to get a great education? And as I looked deeper and deeper into it, I found that there are many, many failing schools across the country, and not just in the poorer neighborhoods.
I think that was one of the things that was most enlightening to me. We have here in Austin a couple of school districts that are considered, oh, well, you want to live there if you're going to go to public school.
Right.
But from what I saw in your report, you just can't assume that is a good school then.
Yeah, we followed a young girl in Northern California where the houses are, the average house is like $1 million. And the high school's supposed to be really good. But as you look into it, you realize it's not serving all kids. So the problems of our school system, which has sort of been eroding for 40 years, is really everywhere. And the important thing is for mothers and fathers who are getting their kids ready for school this time of year, should really look and see how their schools are doing. You can go online, you can see the scores, and really see who's how the state of Texas is doing.
One thing that came out to me in this was that people want to believe the best. Maybe it's they feel well, you tell me why you think that is.
Well, it's a riddle to me. I don't know, but there's a lot of parents who just want to believe that their school is the best. It's a psychological thing where they think the schools over there aren't so good, but their school's great. And I think that's sort of a natural instinct. But in this state of Texas, there are 206 dropout factories. Now, dropout factories where more than 40% of the kids don't graduate, and that's a disturbing number. And worse than that, there are many schools that are not as bad, but are just sort of pushing kids through and not getting them ready for the modern economy. It's really hard now to have a good career choices if you don't have a high school diploma, even if you don't have a college diploma. And so that affects the economy, it affects the price of your home, affects the safety of your neighborhood. So this problem is starting to affect all of us, and that's why I made this movie.
206 in Texas. I'm going to have to look up some figures too. You probably don't off the top of your head know anything about Austin in particular. I'll have to do that.
Well, I know Austin's obviously the state capital. I know a lot of really important legislation's happening, and there's a lot of interesting things that are happening in Texas, some good and some bad. What every state needs are mothers and fathers demanding better schools. Because it's funny when you look at schools that have become great, it's always because neighbors and moms and dads just get together and go up and say, look, we need better schools. And it starts with learning about what's going on. And you can go online because of No Child Left Behind, whether you like it or hate it. It's great in the sense that you can go online and see the scores of your personal school. You can see what the scores are of the individual grades. I think you can go and see my movie. And the movie is a really simple primer of like, what is the state of our schools? And what are the stakes for you?
And some of the parents, well, all of the parents who you profiled seem to get it.
Yeah.
They seem to know, we need something different.
Yeah.
But what killed me was when they were trying to close some of the schools in Washington, the parents fighting it.
Yeah.
And when they were trying to fire some of the people, the parents saying, no, don't do this.
Well, it's interesting. One of the things I learned when I saw this film is that the system kind of works for a lot of adults. So for people who have jobs around the school business, like the central office, even some management and even some teachers, it's a secure job. And I get that in poorer neighborhoods. But that's not enough anymore. You gotta really insist that the best people are teaching every kid. And so sometimes the changes that people have to make better schools can cite some uncomfortable things. But it's the great news is that this is a really exciting time for education. I mean, there's reforms that are happening all across the country, which are actually proving that you can open a school anywhere and teach any kid. And a lot of the interesting, really exciting new educators came out of Texas. So they get that there's two young guys out of Houston, Mike Feinberg and David Levin started this school called KIPP schools, and there are 4 here in Austin. KIPP for knowledge is power, and these schools are going in the toughest neighborhoods, and they're performing miracles every day. KIPP all around the country, they're like more than 80 schools are putting more than 90% of their graduates into a 4-year college. It's a miracle. It's a difference. It's night and day in terms of the education those kids are getting.
We'll have to go there and do something when we do this in
Oh,
October.
I really do think it's a great profile to go in. You walk in there, and the kids stand up and they say they know their graduating class to go to college. They are so focused on going to college and changing their lives. These schools are a miracle, and they can tell us a lot about what our schools need to be.
We talked about something, because this will come up in the piece, that and you're so upfront about it. My kids go to a private school.
Yeah.
Do you? We talked about this before the camera was rolling. Do you feel guilty about that, or do you feel like, my gosh, why didn't I find a public school that would work, or what do you think?
I think every parent is going to do whatever they can to give their kid a great education. And I send my kids to a great private school, and I don't feel guilty at all about it. What I would feel guilty about is that I'm not doing enough for other people's children. And that was kind of like the secret sort of mission for me, is like, how do I get people to care about other people's children? If we got moms especially to fight for other people's children as much as they fight for their own, we do a lot better with our schools.
What has ended up happening with the 5 children you profiled?
So I don't want to talk too much.
Yeah,
about what
because
happens
that kind
to
of gives it away.
I don't want to give.
All right, we won't even go
no,
there.
but it's really. I think one of the powerful things about this movie is, and I imagine if you're sitting at home saying, "Oh, there's a film about our public schools," that's going to be a drag. Oh yeah, I've seen that movie before. But this movie is actually very entertaining and inspiring, and you follow these kids like I did, and you meet them, and you fall in love with them, and you just want to see what happens to them. And there's a little kid named Anthony from D.C. and a girl named Daisy from Los Angeles, boy named Francisco from New York, and you're just like, all they want is a great school. And you see how their parents, who are really kind of heroic, try to figure out the system of how to find the best school for them.
With so many more obstacles than what we have.
Yeah, with a lot of obstacles. I mean, what's interesting is you kind of feel like, well, some parents don't care. Well, what's fascinating for me is I found parents that care. I think it's really, I mean, it happens, but most of the time, when you have a mother who has a kid, now she may not have all the options, and she may be too busy with having a job or her other problems, but I've never met a mother that didn't want the most for their kids, and that's what you see in this movie. These kids who Daisy wants to be a doctor, and she's already written. She's in 5th grade, and she's already written to a college to say, "I want to be a doctor. Will you please think about me when I apply 10 years from now?" And you just say, God, what are we doing to help her get her dream? And what I saw was we're not doing enough.
We of course have teachers unions here in Texas,
Yeah.
in Austin,
Yeah.
and whenever some new requirement is imposed upon them, we go cover the stories of them saying that's not fair, that's not fair. But what you saw in your film is that it is fair, because in every other profession, just
Right.
about, you do have those kinds of checks and balances.
Right. Some people would say, oh, unions are all bad and we should get rid of them. I don't believe that. I think unions are an essential part of our country. Like, they protect workers. When you go to coal mines and you see some of the abuses there, unions protect workers, and they should protect teachers. But it's gotten to a point where unions have so many restrictions on the way educators work and the way schools work and the way districts are managed that it gets in the way of the reform that needs to happen. And so I think I took a pretty honest and open look at the way the unions are right now. And I think hopefully the movie will start to push them in a direction where they're protecting teachers, but they're not getting in the way of reform.
And just tenure
Yeah.
seems to be the worst
Right.
idea.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it had its time,
Yeah.
but that time has come and gone, would you say, or not?
Well, it's a really interesting point. Tenure was originally for college professors, and the idea is that, it protects a college professor from writing an important paper and not being fired for it, so that ideologues can't take over a school. And you can see that sometimes happening here in Texas, where one philosophy overrides another. And I think there's a good, strong argument for sort of freedom of thinking, but that's not the case with a K through 12 teacher. Now, in some cases, teachers need to be protected from sort of, a principal who just is a mean dude. But now it's gotten to the point where if you have a teacher who's not doing a great job, and they're not that many, but you have teachers that are just, failing kids, you cannot get rid of them. It's so difficult. And I think in Texas, the tenure laws are much more lax, or not at all. But that's
still very difficult.
Still very difficult. And I think maybe that's not tenure, but different contractings make it really hard. It's really hard to just assess teachers. They've made it very difficult for you to go and see, how many times a principal can visit a teacher, how often, and how they assess teachers. And that's really important. You can't figure out a great school unless you can assess your teachers and really figure out who's doing the great job and who you have to develop and make better.
For people who will go see this, and even for people who won't, if you could tell people one thing as they watch this, because we always like to kind of give people, we're not going to tell you it's bad, but here's something you can do that's realistic.
Yeah.
What would you have people do?
Yeah, because I think it's a really great question, because I think a lot of people feel like, well, it's just hopeless. The situation is too complex, and I just got to take care of my own. The first thing you got to do if you want to get involved in helping your schools is to get informed. And as I said, you can go online and you can learn about the scores of your individual school. And I think the next step really is seeing this movie. It's a simple primer of just like what's going on and how, what it takes to do it, because I show what the stakes are, but I also show that there's some amazing reformers that are doing amazing things, and if we learn from them, we really can fix our schools. But it starts by being informed. So you can go to waitingforsuperman.com and pledge to see the movie and learn how you can get a group to go see the movie, and then it gives you steps along the way to help fix your schools.
Right, but the first thing is opening your eyes to the problem.
Yeah, being aware of what the stakes are. It's really, I think for a long time we thought, well, there are problems in our schools, but they're over there. Now the problems are everywhere, and we got to be a great country. We got to fix our schools.
Okay, and I know here in Austin we do have several what are called good school districts.
Yeah, sure.
And they are on the Newsweek list
Yeah,
that
yeah.
you talked about in the
Yeah.
film. But one point that I want to get across in this as well as the others is that you can't just assume that, because look at this girl, she seemed like such a bright, articulate girl, and she's been put on the non-collegiate track.
Yeah. And it's interesting. There are some great schools that aren't as good as we thought they were. And then there are some great schools that are wonderful for the hard work of great teachers and principals. But not every kid has a shot at them. Maybe you're born in the wrong neighborhood, or maybe there's a lottery and you can't get in. The point is, I think, if we're going to be a great country and we're going to live up to this idea of America, we got to give every kid a shot at the American dream.
And that was the other thing, the neighborhoods. Which came first, the bad neighborhood or the bad schools?
Yeah.
Where do we put that?
Well, that was an interesting idea, and sort of a breakthrough for me, is this idea that a lot of people, well, that's a bad school because the neighborhood is struggling. And I started to sort of rethink that, as when you think of people who are there working. They said, well, you know what? The neighborhood's struggling because the school's not doing a good job. If you've got a great school in a neighborhood, I don't care how tough it is, it's like a beating heart. It pumps life into that neighborhood. It's a place for parents to come together. It's a place where kids learn that there are possibilities. And it means that those kids will go on to college and they'll come back and build up that neighborhood. The prices of homes will rise. The streets get safer. If we really want to fix our neighborhoods, it starts with fixing our schools.